Down here in the pitch black, a Cold War is heating up. Superpowers have extended their strategic focus 3 miles straight down to the very bottom of the world's oceans. Scattered across a massive stretch of the Pacific known as the Clarion-Clipperton Zone, there are an estimated 21.1 billion tons of polymetallic nodules. Think of them as high-grade battery rocks resting right on top of the mud. These dark lumps are packed with cobalt, nickel, and manganese. You need massive quantities of them to build a green electrical grid, but you also need them to manufacture next-generation missile guidance systems. This chart shows the exact bottleneck driving the rush to the ocean. Right now, China controls nearly 100% of the world's refined natural graphite and 70% of refined cobalt. Everyone else is competing for scraps. Relying on land-based mines means dealing with highly volatile supply chains and rapidly depleting deposits. The easiest materials to dig up are already gone, leaving Western powers vulnerable to sudden export bans. If a country can harvest an independent supply of these deep-sea minerals, they bypass terrestrial choke points entirely. It is a direct, physical path to strategic autonomy. The sprint for these minerals officially began with this tiny Pacific island. In July 2021, Nauru pulled a legal lever known as the 2-year rule. This obscure clause forced the International Seabed Authority, the UN body responsible for the ocean floor, into a mad dash to write and finalize the rules for commercial deep-sea extraction. That legal clock officially runs out in July 2026. What used to be a sleepy, decades-long debate over maritime law is now a full-blown sprint to the buzzer. If July 2026 comes and goes without a completed rulebook, a massive legal loophole opens up. Technically, corporations and state-backed enterprises could submit applications for commercial mining licenses, and the authority would have to consider them, even without standard environmental or financial safeguards in place. And the hardware is already waiting. Ships like the Hidden Gem are highly advanced, factory-scale platforms built specifically to harvest the seabed the second they get the green light. With the regulations lagging behind the technology, the high seas have turned into a free-for-all. The world's largest economies are aggressively maneuvering to grab their territory before someone else does. This map of the Pacific shows exactly who is winning the race right now. Looking closely at the Clarion-Clipperton Zone, you can see China holds more international exploration licenses than any other nation. At the negotiating table, Beijing has consistently blocked discussions on marine conservation areas. Their strategy is to maximize industrial zones and minimize bureaucratic red tape. Meanwhile, India is carving out its own territory. They are pouring resources into exploring the central Indian Ocean basin, aiming to secure their own vast reserves of polymetallic nodules. They aren't just mapping the floor, they're preparing to go there. Advanced trials of the Matsya 6,000 manned submersible prove India is building the deep water capabilities to operate on an industrial scale. Then there is the United States. Washington is severely handicapped because it never actually ratified the UN Convention on the Law of the Sea, locking it out of the international licensing process entirely. To bypass that gridlock, the US has dusted off domestic legislation from the 1980s. They are treating the ocean floor as a strictly national security issue, finding legal backdoors to back their own commercial expeditions. You have 3 massive economies using 3 entirely different legal and diplomatic playbooks, all accelerating toward the exact same July 2026 bottleneck. But there is a brutal physical reality to extracting thousands of tons of metal from the deep ocean. The extraction machinery pulverizes the seafloor, generating enormous sediment plumes. These underwater dust storms can drift for hundreds of kilometers, completely smothering fragile abyssal ecosystems that take millennia to grow back. The ocean naturally absorbs roughly 25% of global carbon dioxide. Churning up the deepest parts of the seafloor threatens to release thousands of years of stored carbon, directly accelerating the very climate crisis these batteries are supposed to solve. Developing nations are watching a tragedy of the commons unfold in real time. The most technologically advanced states will extract the immediate profit, while the global south will bear the brunt of the ecological collapse. This level of ecological collapse is the built-in overhead of the operation, the physical cost of securing global military and economic supremacy. All of this tension is set to detonate at the International Seabed Authority's 2026 Assembly. If delegates fail to reach a consensus, the fragile international framework will fracture. Nations will start issuing unilateral mining permits, effectively chopping up and privatizing the last untouched spaces on Earth. The abyssal plains of the Pacific and Indian Oceans are now strategic geographies as critical as any terrestrial land border. This defining conflict of the 21st century will happen in the dark, balancing our need for resource security against the survival of the ocean floor.